Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for the invitation, Chairman and the CEO, Mohan, and then Premaran, and a lot of my professors here as well. You all thank me. Actually, I want to thank you all to be part of it because, my training, everything, why I am here right now is because of the University of Colombo trained me. So I owe Sri Lanka, so whenever I get a chance, I always want to give me back, whatever I can. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm not used to this, but I used to lecture, so I just wanted to see whether, how it goes. If you have any questions or anything, if you want to freely invite. So this is not a technical lecture at all, right? Because this is Keynote. I just wanted to bring something, what is now currently going on. So that's what I just picked. So let's see. So as you all know, why we are here is just because of the data science. It's a multidisciplinary approach, extracting from mathematics, right, and extracting from structured and unstructured data. So it's a multidisciplinary field. Having said that, I just want to stress on the fundamental. I know we wanted to work on applied, but the success of me is because of my fundamental. So I just want to stress on that. I had seen people focus more on the applied without having the fundamental. So make sure you have the balance. That's going to be the one for the key to success for a long run. And also the programming side, plays a vital role. And then as, the current theme of these innovations, information, business technologies, the current theme of this year's conference mainly tag into, the economy, right? So the current system, it plays a vital role of data science. As you see, it just goes from healthcare, finance, education, marketing. And one of the fields I wanted to just bring on, maybe not that, people use a lot in Sri Lanka, is in the legal side as well. There's a lot of data science application can go on to that. So make sure that you pay attention to that as well. So let's just start from a history of AI. I just want to bring in how this evolved. And this is, from one of my good friends, I just borrowed this. So in 1950s earlier, where it's traditionally called statistics, but that's where the linear regression and then slightly going to the nonlinear activation started. That's where the data science evolved initially. I thought this is just a good place to play a small video just to explain the data science evolving is. So because, the traditionally...
Too full, tough volley.
Into the corner.
Oh, it's gone over. First aggressive intent from Sanat Jayasuriya, and he's hit it as clean as a whistle, and it's gone the distance.
Picked it up really nicely on his legs. Such a strong on square of the wicket, and picks it up all the way. First six for him and Sri Lanka in this game.
He's that kind of player, even on good bowling pitches, when there is a bit of health, will take the attack to the opposition.
I'll play one more, then after that I'll just stop.
Back from the crowd just as quickly as it went in.
So as you see the last shot, right, is just going the offside. So the traditional statistical or the traditional approaches, whatever we worked on, we couldn't work it with Jayasuriya's approach. That's what this new data science and AI is. If I just explain it, the more nonlinear approach is what we needed. That's where the AI evolved. If I'm trying to connect it the way what AI is from the traditional one, you can think of when the traditional consultants who work with the cricket coaches couldn't explain how to just approach the Jayasuriya's, like the style of play. That's where this modern AI just come into play, because it's no longer just a linear or the traditional way of looking at it. So I thought that's just to connect you all. So that's where the 1950s evolved. Then you're just moving on further. Then the binary classifiers came a little bit later in 1990s. Then the image processing is just what the first important part of the modern AI, where it just start evolve further. Then the autoencoders came. Then the early generative AI came in the 2010s and GANs. And the embedding tables. The most important part is just where the 2017 is where the new era of AI begin, starting from this deep learning, the DeepMind AlphaGo, and then the current part is transformers. That's the key of this ChatGPT and everything what we are talking about the modern world, is where the trend of this just start from this transformers introduction. Right, so that's just come to the generative chatbot. So I just want to give you the framework of how this evolved. So the 2017 and onwards is one of the key time frame for this modern era of AI. So as you all know, the role of AI in advanced data science, because we want to do automated data processing, and the natural language processing is just evolved a lot now with this modern, what we use as Facebooks and all Instagrams and all. There are a lot of chats and data we just transfer. So we had to process that. And another important aspects of something we can tag as from Sri Lanka is the recommender system. That's another modern research going on. Starting from a simple movie review, right? So if you want to recommend, or even a product if you want to recommend, if you are doing an online shopping, when you start browsing, based on your browsing history, you get recommendation. Right? The next time if you just open up, it's just giving that. So that is where the data science just using your history of the, what you browse, and based on that, they just get as well. And then of course, the deep learning is just another trend, right? So if you want to be a data scientist, you should know deep learning. Otherwise, you cannot even claim as a data scientist, right? That's the way now they just look into. Okay, so now let's look at the main part, right? So the LLM, right? It's just for NLP advancements and the text summarization, and also the sentiment analysis. Those are the parts where the LLM just transforming. So what is this LLM, right? So everybody talk about this. So it's essentially stands for large language models, right? Based on the transformer architecture. Remember, I just showed you that 2018 is where the transformer architecture just introduced. And that is based on that. So if you wanted to study LLM, or if you want to get, so you should know what is a transformer architecture. Make sure that you get that fundamental part of it, then only you can get more into the applied side of it, right? So the transformers is nothing but it's just based on neural network architecture, but it's replaced the traditional one where it's going to use more deep neural network, and it just has the processing sequentially the data as opposed to just sentence by sentence. So it's come from the ability to transform it more sequence, right? So this allows system to be more parallelizable. So that's where we can get an ad hoc decision as opposed to traditionally we had to just wait on it. So that's where this modern, right, LLM just plays a role. So the key to this LLM is the ability to analyze the vast quantities of text, patterns, and language, grammar, syntax, whatever you name it. This process is essentially involved training. But the training is based on everything is available in public. So that is where the challenge comes into play. You cannot control what is available, right? Because people can say anything, and that's going to become, if it is become publicly available, that's going to be also part of this training model. So as always, Dr. Rowan teaches course, and I'm sure in a long time he always mentioned this garbage in, garbage out, right? So that's essentially it is. Sometimes if you when you input the data, if something just goes in bad, right, that's going to be part of the model, and that's going to become the challenge what we are going to face. Because it's sort of what they call the self-supervised learning, right? It's just going to be. So if I just put it in the way in the past, when you wanted to do a learning, let's say you have a cat and you have a dog, right? So you put the image and then train this. Say this is cat, this is dog, and then you train the model. Then you are trying to put an image, then the image trying to identify, okay, whether it's a cat or dog. That's what the traditional AI is. In this modern LLM, what it do is, it just, it's read articles and just news, everything, whatever is necessary. Then it's automatically identify and think this is what is going to be a cat and this is what is going to be a dog. So if someone just puts a wrong information about the cat, and if it is part of the model training, then it's going to interpret that as wrong. So that is the difference of this modern LLM where it's sort of self-supervised learning as opposed to, right, we have those labeling where we control it. So the LLM has rapidly transformed numerous industries and domains and all. Of course, that is there, right? So let's look at some of these areas. The first one is what we call the content creation. Because it's a very powerful tool for content creation, changing how we generate written material across the various domains. It is very powerful, right? In fact, sometimes being an academic, I still use that ChatGPT to do something useful for me. Like a secretarial assistant, if I wanted to write a reference letter for my student, all I had to do is put some key points. It will generate a nice letter for you, right? Just very articulated. But you need to go over to make sure that it's doing certain things right, but at least it saves time. So there are usefulness of how do you make use of it, right? Your own purpose. So that is there because the content creations, right? It's even exceeding the understanding of the context, syntax, and language, all those things, it just comes into nicely. Because, in sort of writing, human writers, it's going to take over that task of doing it for you. So what are the advantages of this? One of the key advantages, right? It's going to coherently, create the relevant text, and develop a deep understanding of the language patterns and enabling them to produce a high quality content. Because nowadays, even some of the companies, if you apply for the jobs, initially they do the machines to screen your CVs. So this generation know like what are those keywords and then it will make it. So you have a chance to get screened from the first because it's a machine written one, right? And the machine is reading to identify whether you are suit enough. So there's a good chance, right? It's going to just go to the second layer of it. Because they can mimic the style, tones of specific authors as well, and also adapt different targeted audiences based on what we have. So one of the tool we use Dramatron, which is a system that uses to generate scripts and screenplays. So people also now write poets and dramas and things like that using the machine itself. Right? But of course, you have to feed in enough information to have that. So you could be a screenwriter, you could be a player, or anything, whatever. Now it could be machine-driven. So you can make an entire movie just using the screenplay of a machine itself. So it's happening, right? So there are characters, there are sources, everything is just articulated in that as well. Of course, in the scientific side, right, one of the key part of any researcher is to first identify the literature review. What is available, right? So that I can just modify and then add. Now, you can even use tools from LLM to just get the assistant from that to support the literature review. Because if you are working on a thesis or if you're working on a paper, the first part, what you need to do is to find out how far the research is in this particular topic. So you can do the literature review from the scientific side. Having said that, again, as I said, it's going to use everything. You cannot restrict, right? This is what the search is. So you have to make sure that whatever the literature is just claiming is essentially. Because if someone is writing, about a specific theme, if it is not peerly reviewed an article, if it is still publicly available, it's going to be part of this, right? So even if it is not a proven theory, this system might think this is part of the literature and try to report it. So we should still play a key role to identify whether it is. but at least it's going to give you some sort of narrow down approach rather than just looking at it as a globally. Right? So that is the advantage. So we can efficiently analyze the vast number of research papers, right, saving time. It's going to provide a lot of comprehensive understanding of this paper. Right? Because one of the thing is, the time is important. I just want to stress that, staying here, right, this is Sri Lanka, coming from US, I want to stress that. If you come to that part of the world, you will find difficult to find time sometimes. But here, right, we have the luxury, one of the country we have great holidays. You can count how many holidays we have and all. So that is good. But at the same time, you want to make sure that, right, the time is valuable. So always, count on that because, we can just relax and enjoy. That is part of it. We need that. But make sure that whatever the energy you put, the time is important and value. So just that, make sure, right? Because you will realize one time, right, you don't have time to do certain things which you want to. So when you have time, always make sure. This is especially if you are starting as a researcher, right? Do the fundamental, right? So one of the advice, like when I was starting my career is just, I started as a statistician, right? So I was studying statistics. So the advice they gave me is eat statistics, drink statistics, sleep with statistics, right? That's the way you can broad up, right? So just want to make sure that you just think in that. Okay, so coming back, right, LLMs can generate prompts to explore new research angles as well. Sometimes I had seen it's actually very, promising. But as I said, as a human, you have something different. You are not machines, right? So make sure that you cleverly make use of it rather than just use as it is. Because they lack the logic, right, the humans have while navigating the real world data. So you wanted to provide, right, that critical evaluation based on that. Another important aspect is what they call the co-pilot assistant, right? This is a very powerful tool in legal settings. So I don't know whether in Sri Lanka how far this system is usable, right, currently using, but this is, they found very, very, very important. Because as you all know, sometimes, right, we had to do so many paperwork to get a simple things done, right? But doing this sort of co-pilot assistant, it's going to just create, right, draft legal documents, right, and briefings, and also offering suggestions based on the understanding of the legal language and precedents. So it can serve as a programming assistant, right, providing code completion and so on. So this is a key area. Now there is a lot of application going on which saves a valuable time. As I said, time is important. This saves a valuable time, right, because there are certain like simple paperworks can be just get it done, right, but you need to make sure that legality and fundamentals are right, so you can make use of this in that aspects as well. So now coming back to the large language model examples, everybody knows ChatGPT, right? It's it's an advanced conversation AI model developed by OpenAI, right? So it's essentially GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer Architecture. Again, the transformer, what I mentioned, which utilizes the deep neural network to generate human-like responses in a natural language, right? So that is what, of course, now you can even just have that as an app in your phones, right? You can just simply type something. You might even get a keynote speak sometime, right? Just people use a lot, right? And then it's just also using different things. You can even do exams. You can generate quizzes. All sort of different things happening, right? So people are using and misusing it, right? So it's up to you all to see whether you want to use it perfectly or misuse it in a different way. So this model is trained into two-step process in the ChatGPT, right? There's a pre-training and then there's a fine-tuning approach. That's what, right, they do. So it learns, right, to predict the next word in the sentence by analyzing the large scale of text data. And then it just continuous process, right? That's what it's generating, the paragraphs or whatever you want to explore based on that. So we get a lot of attention, right? Mostly due to the impressive, the language generation capabilities, right? So we don't need to rely on anyone to write. Like as I said, even a simple letter, if I want to write, right? Rather than writing it, it just puts in nice words. But ChatGPT also has limitations, right? The model may occasionally generate incorrect, nonsensical responses, as I said, right? Because, it's going to use everything available in the, right, internet, right, everything available in the real data. So because if there is something which is not part of it, it's going to just use or exhibit the biases in the training data. So which is unavoidable. So because of that, right, it struggled and handling some ambiguous queries. Also, OpenAI has made efforts to mitigate these issues by challenging in fine-tuning such language model persists. So sometimes there are ways people do. So instead of use it as an entire data training, they subdivide the data and then tuning it and then doing it automated way. So there are a lot of research going on in that aspects to how to efficiently use this ChatGPT as well. Then you might have heard this, the Google created BERT, bidirectional encoder representation from transformers, right? It's a highly influential language model developed by Google, which is also revolutionized the NLP, right, introducing the bidirectional approach. So it's just it's going to, based on the word you input, it's going to also predict the future word as well as sort of the word before that. So that's sort of the bidirectional approach Google do, right, which is slightly different from the ChatGPT approach, right? This is what they call the mass language model pre-training objective, which is something people use in modern techniques as well. So this is sort of the fundamental of the pre-training and the fine-tuning in the BERT, overall pre-training and fine-tuning procedures, how this just happens. So there's a huge research going on in the Google platform to modify it, and then just based on these two. And they are trying to come up with an app itself, right, just for an alternative to ChatGPT people can use as well. So during the pre-training, the model is trained on unlabeled data over different pre-training tasks. Then, right, it can serve as a valuable tool in several applications, right? But there is a specific usage, right, is the sentimental analysis. That is one of the key area where the ChatGPT might not work well, but they found that BERT is something more compelling in that side as well, because it can efficiently and effectively comprehend and interpret the meaning of the text in this context. Right? Because sometimes like a specific word, depending on the context of what you use, has different meanings. The ChatGPT sometimes misses that, whereas this, they found, right, in that sense. So that's what the sentimental analysis, right, the BERT is just more appealing as opposed to. I don't know how many of you all watch a series in Netflix, right? So this is connected to that. So based on that, they developed this legal co-pilot, which they call Harvey, right? It's developed by the Ross Intelligence, which is essentially to support the legal professionals. This is actually came from this Netflix series Suits. If you get a chance, go and watch it. It's a very good series for long one. But this person in this is what Harvey is, right? Harvey Specter. So based on his series, right, someone start looking at it and then develop the co-pilot, right, which is essentially a tool now. So inspired by Harvey Specter, right? This is the character of the Suits. So they developed this legal co-pilot, Harvey, which is essentially a very good tool people use now. And then there's a lot of research going on in this. So it's enabled the lawyers to optimize their workflow, to allocate their time and resources more efficiently, and deliver timely and comprehensive solution to the clients. Then, of course, there is Galileo AI, which is an interface designed with the co-pilot, instantly generate UI design from a text prompt. So I will show you how it works. It's an interface design. Excuse me. So it's simply you need to just type, the description. So an onboarding screen for dog walking. So it just try to give you the image immediately. So just type it there. So it's just going to. So now a profile page for a book reading app. For and just giving immediately that. So that is the right generated. The Galileo AI is just what used for. So that is another tool, people use. So it's not just the scriptive itself, so the images and then also the design itself. So imagine if you need to develop a simple app, right? Just how many things you need to go over to just get this. Now, with simple description, it's going to automate it and give you. So the small businesses, right? They don't need to spend a lot just to generate what they want to. They can just simply use this tool to just generate the basics things as an app or an advertisement, whatever you want to design that. That's the advantage of this. So there is, or even if you look at it, everybody's already using it. If you just type it in a chat, right, it just give you the next word, right? What is a potential word? Or if you just use some keyboard, right, the next potential word. All these are just features of this LLM, right? So it's just trying to predict that and then giving you the next word, right? So the large language models in industry and verticals, so we can use in healthcare, in finance, education, marketing, and legal, as I said. Furthermore, also the social sciences, right? Opinions, right? Or public policies, right? All those can be also use LLM to just build this one. And, we wanted to see there is a lot of power cuts going on, right? So can we do some sort of energy, right? Renewable energy or environmental monitoring, things like that, right? We can use, again, LLM to just generate in that side as well, right? Because data science empowers industries to harness the power of the data, right? Leading to increased efficiency and enhance customer support. So let's see, still, there are a lot of challenges, right? So we said all great things about LLM. So can we simply use this? Of course, there are challenges, right? The bias in training data, right, is one of the impact in AI outputs. And of course, data privacy and security concerns are there. And lack of interpretability, right, in transparency in LLM decision making is there. And the overcoming the limitations in LLM, understanding the context of the intent. Sometimes we just only care about the output. We don't just know what's going on inside. That can hurt us, right, in the long run. And of course, there is lot of ethical consideration, right? Because sometimes some of the things we do is not ethically correct, right? So that is an important part where it's one. Here is just an example to just show bias in a language model, right? It's like a project where the gender shades project, they try to look at it. So because they feed in a lot of information, right, from one side of the data, so it came as a bias. So it's in the facial recognition system, there's a disproportional only misidentify the darker skinned woman compared to the lighter skinned men. Because, right, the way they train the model is just, right, they have more information from this. So if you wanted to identify in a simple flip a coin 50-50, right? But even here they found that in the worst case scenario, the darker female faces is 1 in 3 they misses it. So it's just even worse compared to what could be a simple flip coin. But overall, if you look at the accuracy, it might be successful because 95% of the trained data might be something, from the lighter skinned men, and then that's data, right? They look at it, so it's perfect accuracy-wise, so you get nice publication out of it, right? Everybody celebrate it, but if you look at carefully, what it misses is the key, right? Because you didn't have enough information to train, so that is where, right, existing, so this is what, I wanted to say, existing measures of success in AI don't reflect the global majority. We are fooling ourselves sometimes, right? So you have to be careful of just looking at it and say, okay, everything looks fine, working fine, right? Without looking at carefully what is inside. But this project is essentially, they look at the, companies, CEOs and all. So it's mainly dominated by, right, lighter skinned males, right, compared to these darker skinned females. So when they look at the data and train them and then try to predict their new data, it didn't work out the way it's supposed to be, right? Because it's simple binary classification, but you see here, right, it just, because what you feed in is important, where like it just train into this. Also, the ChatGPT experiment opened by the face challenges with the model generating false or misleading information. Sometimes, you can also get the misleading information. There are people working on to just feed in misleading information to spoil the system itself. You know, like, you know, some part of the world, when we do, you know, back here, like we do handwork, right? In the school, you had to do a simple thing. Maybe like we make a shape or things like that. But some part of the world, people do handworks like this. Even schoolings, you know, you had to find to spoof the data, like things like that, people train, right? So we are just not only facing this side, right? We're also facing the other side. So there is a lot of incorrect or like misinformation is already feeding in, it's happening. So we have to be careful. How do we just, you know, get that side? And of course, there is a privacy concern in data collection, right? Stanford University, right, in 2020, right, they did an open AI data collection. They didn't realize, right, which involves, you know, available websites to train large models, but they unintentionally made publicly available personal information. So because when you do open AI, right, we are using this data collection, sometimes it's possible, right, your information is just, right, available in public. So privacy concern is another important aspect, right, where LLM has the challenges in. And then the reinforcing the social biases in the language itself. As you know, if you go to the news channels and then you know, listen to the reports, most of the time, a lot of information, what they feed in is just a biased language itself, right? So we're also now with this social media, a lot of information where like you use these languages which become part of the model. So when you train that, right, then it's going to create the biases in the language itself, right, which become the norm for this. And the most important part, as always we say, right, the lack of interpretability in the transparency in LLM modeling. Because it's because of the black box nature of the model, right? Because LLM is mainly using the transformer approach, right, using the deep learning. So because of the nature of the model, we have these issues, right, the lack of interpretability. And then the nonlinear transformation, like as I said, like, you know, this is not like the traditional cricket, right? It's like Jayasuriya's cricket, right? So that nonlinear approach, right, the transformation is become even, right? The relationship is not straightforward. So there is a large also there is a large amount of unlabeled and then, you know, so data. So you can feed in a non-explicit or ground truth data. So that can hurt as well. So we have to make sure that we need to address this. So I will just say a few things, you know, before wrapping up. So there is a couple of research going on, right? So especially the interpretability, because as you all know, the explainable AI, right? That's sort of the another part people work on research. So feature visualization is something people use on, and there is also attention visualization. And then also they use the rule-based explanation. Sometimes you train smaller models, which is more interpretable. Then you try to just, you know, mimic that to just produce a large interpretability. So there is a lot of research going on this. And this is where I would say we can play a role, because explainable AI, just again going back to the previous, you know, the simple logics and models what we had, then try to generalize it. So if you try to interconnect those two, that is, you know, the part. Because this doesn't need a lot of power or anything. It's just simply some thinking and then just sit down. You should be able to work on to get something out of it. And then, of course, you know, we need to also look at the second component is more important, domain-specific fine-tuning. Sometimes when we tune the data, instead of using the entire, right, internet or the web, whatever available, we have to make sure that can be restricted domain-specific part. So that way we can restrict this garbage in, feed into the data, right? So that is another part where we need to do. Also, there is a transfer learning, right? When you do the pre-training, right, we can also bring the human interaction there to just get some extra help, right? That is where, like, you know, if you are a data scientist, we are going to work on, or a company, you want to bring the company's, you know, agent and then just sit with them to identify what's going on, rather than you do it in your own, because you wanted to bring the domain-specific expert to connect what is going on to bring the explainability. So the last part is ethical consideration. So bias and fairness is important. Transparency and explainability is important. And privacy and data protection, right? And you want to have the human oversight. That is the key, right? And make sure that the accountability and governance, which is very important for Sri Lanka as well, right? You all know. So which is what is going to establish a clear, right, visibility, so that we can just make sure that there is lot of good things in LMM, right? But we want to make sure that we wanted to make use of that in the proper way to just connect, right? So that's where we can mitigate the challenge and responsibility by doing the actual explainability AI and LLM to be just more powerful. Right, so with that, right, I just look at the last part where the future research is, we want to advance LLM for sure, right? But we could do it in the domain-specific way, and we also want to connect the interdisciplinary research. Don't sit down and then just work on your own anymore, right? So you wanted to have a team which has different expertise combined. That is the best way to move forward the data science approach. So bring that as the holistic AI solution to get that. Right? Thank you. And then if you have any question, I'm happy to just answer. Next step for what? Yeah, that's what I said. It has to be, you know, like you wanted to use like a domain-specific way, and then there has to be a human interaction. I would say you, instead of using the entire data set, now what they are doing is they are subdividing the data set and tunings, and then just, you know, pre-training parties you are doing separately. Then after that, they are combining. So it's going on. So there is usage, and of course, the policy making is important. When to use, there is some sort of governance and regulation we need to build in, so we can still make use of, but not to misuse it. So that's going on as well. Even, in fact, some of the universities, I didn't talk much because I know we are going to, you know, have a panel later, but some of the universities are making specific policies because they wanted to use it. And some universities are saying, don't even using it because they don't want to deal with the policy. So there are a lot of things going on in both sides.
About multiple other languages now. These are language models, so it's all in English. So
exactly.
What about the other languages?
Absolutely. That is one part. I mean, good that you mentioned. I wanted to bring that. That is actually a good part of it. Nobody's doing it because, you know, like most of these money is where like this is going on, especially in English. And there are a lot of languages, you know, which is very powerful itself, but the training part is, you know, very important in that. But definitely that is something to explore, because you could become, like, you know, a good poetry in a language like Sinhala or Tamil, where like there is a lot of richness in that language, unlike the English language. So you can bring that, definitely. Yeah. But because everything now go with the money, like if you want to get grants and all, you need to go in this pathway. But definitely that is something, you know, something we can explore. Because, you know, there are a lot of great poets we used to have traditionally. We don't have it anymore. This is a way to maybe bring some machine-based, you know, poets back.
You mentioned about poets.
Yeah.
In the event that, you know, do you think that there's a stifling of creativity that's happening, you know, that could happen because of this? We have an artificially intelligent tool that is creating stuff now. Do you think that's going to compete with human creativity? Is that?
To some extent, it is happening, right? But again, it's just, you know, we have to draw the line. That's the key, right? So it's just happening. Definitely, people are coming with some sort of a modern artistic way, which is no longer like a human aspect. It is happening. But we are the people who are going to judge it, right? So that is where, like, it's not mission is judging, we are judging. So we don't want to, you know, claim that they are superior to us, right? They are not, right? Because as I said, it's just we have that. So one of the aspects is emotions, right? Machines don't have this emotional aspect. So we have the luxury to just clarify whether it's, because sometimes, you know, if something is good thing happening, you don't want it sounds like a bad the way. So, but the machines doesn't understand. These are machines. So sometimes the emotions can be misinterpreted. So that's sometimes I had seen. happening as well. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you for the nice talk, Professor. Do you think, like, is it important to have a method that we verify this is a generated text or this is actually from a human emotion? I think it's a complex problem. I don't think is the need of that one. Is there any fact that we can identify? Maybe from the pattern we can identify, but even if we ask from ChatGPT whether it's generated by you, he will say it seems like. So is there any research?
That's difficult because see, essentially the data feed in originally, like from the humans, right? And now they are using also based on that the machine input itself. It's a challenging one. So that's where I am saying that it's a policy become the key, right? So we had to make the policy. There's no way you can differentiate, because just to give a simple example, in ChatGPT, if you feed in, it will give different flavors of answers. One would be like extremely like high level. There could be a mid level. There could be very low level. So if you don't really read correctly, you can even produce something which is not supposed to be the right answer, right? So there's no way you can differentiate that.
I think if we are going back to the original definition of machine learning, that means the AI Turing test. So it's actually not discriminatable in this point, like machines generated and human generated.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
So it's more like you are going to use this as a helping tool for us to do our research, not as a main tool to do our research. That is the difference.
Thank you for the nice presentation. As academics, I think we are all challenged due to this ChatGPT. Have you found any policies or the guideline for the future take-home assignments in universities?
That's a good question. I know like we have a panel coming up, so I don't want to reveal everything right now. Anyway, so I would say like, it depends on the, the assignment. So for example, in our university, we have something called, they have to write a report, like some sort of a project report. So what I do is, there is no way we can control that. But our class size is small enough. So what I do is I just take them like a 5 minutes walk. During the walk, they have to just give me what their work they have done. So even if they have if they use ChatGPT to do the project, if they understand very well, they should be able to explain to me in 5 minutes what's going on. As long as if that is the case, it's fine for me, because I'm not expecting them to be a perfect writers. We are training more in the science side. So in this discipline, it's fine. So I'm just evaluating that. So that's where like some sort of interaction we have to do. Maybe an interview or maybe just a small presentation. That's where we can get these things to be just clarified. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much again. Thanks for the opportunity. It's just a pleasure to be here. Again, you have my contact, so if you need any help or anything, you just chat. Feel free to interact with me.